call the meeting to order at 2:30. Woo! I like being on time. I do. And I went to lunch with my husband today at Artie Roadrunner. And he asked me what I had this afternoon. And I'm like, I get to chair the TAC. He's like, is that where you have the gavel? And I'm like, yes. I feel like I should have the gavel in one place. Yeah, I'll say, well, we haven't taken roll call yet, so you're here.
I'll go back.
Now we have people. Oh, we were waiting for quorum and I'm chatting, so. Roll call. All right, Mr. Alini.
Yes, present.
Ms. McNulty. Present. Mr. Linnell.
Present.
Mr. Van Hoek.
Present.
Ms. Palmer here. Ms. Cusman. Present. We have quorum. I'm gonna go slowly to see if we have more people joining us. Would you talk very slowly? Would you mind following me now?
All AMATS committee meetings are open to the public. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by staff and consultant. The committee will then be given a chance to discuss the topic, and then after that, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. All right, first item before us is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. Moved by Mr. Van Hoek, seconded by Ms. McNulty. I believe that there might be.
I do have an addition under informational items. We have our Eagle River PM10 maintenance plan that we are wanting to release for public comment for 30 days. Obviously, it's here as just an informational item. So the policy committee will be being asked to release it next week at their regular scheduled meeting. But we did want to have you folks just talk about it real quickly. I'm assuming Mr. Alimi will give us a little overview of it. I don't know if Mr. Stitchick is going to be here, but I know he was working with it as well. So it should have been on as a regular business item, but I forgot to add it. So we can have a sense of the committee. Obviously, we're not going to vote on it, but the policy committee can vote to release it, and that's just fine. So just want to have a chat about it and the information items.
Okay. Are there any objections to that addition to the agenda? No? Are there any objections to the agenda overall? All right, no? Then the agenda is approved with that minor modification. Let the record show that Ms. Walsh and Ms. Atkins have joined us.
It's amazing.
So we do have the July meeting minutes ahead of us, July 11, 2019. I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. McNulty, seconded by Mr. Van Hoek. Are there any objections?
Go back to abstain since I wasn't here. Be proper.
I think you have to. Yeah, you don't have to.
No?
No.
Okay.
But if you really feel like it.
Yeah.
I'll defer to the will of the body. That's what the assembly always says, the body.
Hearing no objections, those meeting minutes are approved. So moving right along, we are on to our action item, which is the 2040 MTP comment response summary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, excuse me?
Do you have a small presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Vivian Underwood with AMATS, and we do have a small PowerPoint if some of you might be more comfortable moving. But first of all, I just wanted to let you know, for this item, you have a memo, you have a public review draft, preferred alternative project lists, that's roadway, non-motorized and transit. You have the staff comment response summary. You have a in the packet was a summary of our changes to projects only. We were trying to make it easier for you, but unfortunately, we had a few changes, so on your tables is the updated summary for changes to projects. And you have a copy of the PowerPoint. So we'll go through the PowerPoint now. If that's okay.
I think
Okay.
they say it, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Can people see that okay? Okay.
Okay, so just as a reminder to tell you how we got to where we are today, we had 3 lengthy work sessions with the committees, the AMATS Citizens Advisory Committee, the TAC, and the Policy Committee in April, May, and June. Well over 6 hours of time was committed to coming up with a public review draft of the list of projects for the 2040 MTP public review draft. So that was put out for public review and comment in June, and the comment period closed on July 29th. And we put together a list of our comment response summary. And today, we're asking the Technical Advisory Committee to please review this list and recommend approval to the Policy Committee of our responses, especially for the projects. We need to get to a list of projects that we all agree on for the public review draft that we are aiming to get out for the MTP in late fall, November timeframe. So that's our goal. So just to give you an overview of what we heard back from the public, we had 120 comments from the Citizens Advisory Committee, 2 community councils, 1 group, and 15 individuals. And there was no really overwhelming number of projects on any one, comments on any one project. They were kind of scattered through the list. But I would like to give you a list of what people did like, what kinds of projects they do like. And we did hear things that had pertained to policies or action items that we will be considering for Chapter 8 later on. We also did get some comments that we would like to share with the traffic department and municipal and with DOT traffic safety. But as regarding comments on the specific projects, people do like the Northern Lights lane reduction, Minnesota Multi-Bay Boulevard study, Fireweed Lane road diet, the HOV lanes on the Glen Highway, the 3rd and 6th couplet, and then 32nd and 33rd Avenue project, Midtown and Denali, and a lot of the other ones that are on arterials, Golden View Drive, 36th Avenue Access Management, Tudor Road Access Management, and the Multi-Way Implementation Project, and Lake Otis and Dowling intersection improvements. Those are just some examples of the kinds of projects that resonated with the public. We didn't get more than like 2 or 3 comments for each individual project. But then we did hear from 5 individuals making 8 comments on the bundle of projects that you might consider as the Midtown Congestion Project and the Glen Stewart Highway. And these projects, these people were very concerned about the $1 billion that we're putting and investing in these projects. They thought that we were overemphasizing these facilities and the money could be better spent, at least in the short term, on other types of projects. So I'd just like to remind everybody that this is federal money, and we do need to pay attention to federal planning factors. We also need to pay attention to our goals and objectives. And the land use plan does also recognize on page 61 that there will be capacity improvements needed in some parts of town that are considered special land use areas. So capacity is not a dirty word. It's just how we do it. And also there's effective capacity versus physical capacity. And I think that this NTP list is really good because on the arterials, we're not expanding the footprint of the roads in general. I don't think there's a single project that does that. We are expanding capacity on the freeways, and that's needed. And I think this list is very defensible. So let's go on. So in our comment response summary, these are the changes that we were recommending. To move project number 15, which is the Midtown Congestion Relief 36th Avenue interchange, to long-term and combine it with project 212. And I should mention that we did visit with DOT and PF on August 5th. We did sit down and talk with them. So these projects represent what we understood from that meeting, and if this is not right, then we need some clarification. So also 134 was the UNED TDM to reduce the project cost to $500,000 to reflect the TIP admin modification that does that. Project 217, Sewer to Glen Highway, Airport Heights Interchange, move it from long-term to short-term. And again, that was one of the changes that we understood from the conversation with Central Region. So we were kind of excited because this change freed up about $20 million in the short term. And we thought, well, yay, we can use some of that money for some of the other projects that we had heard from the public to do, such as we were recommending to move up 36th Avenue access management from long-term to short-term. At that time, we were thinking Eagle River CBD Phase 2, move it from illustrative to short-term. Number 310 Lake Otis Dowling intersection improvements to short-term. And then 321 Tudor Road access management. And add a new project for Glen Highway tolling study for $500,000. And add a new project Midtown pedestrian intersection study for $500,000. So after we posted our comment response summary, of course, we had done a look at the fiscal constraint, but we took a closer look, and actually we were slightly over in the short term for fiscal constraint. So we were uncomfortable with that, and FHWA has told us it's better to be under than over in estimated revenues versus costs. So we took a closer look, and I apologize, but this was since we posted it on the web last week. So these are our latest recommended changes that's on this list that we put in front of you on the table. Those are captured here. So we are going to move it. We would like to recommend moving out the Glen Highway frontage road study from Thunderbird Falls to Kinnick River Bridge, mostly because it is important, and it's important to emergency response, but we figured that's farther out. It could easily be done in the long term. We're not moving forward the Eagle River CBD Phase 2 study from illustrative short term. That project, as we understand, still has some money left to do that, to do a PEL. They're thinking about, they probably don't even need this money. They have probably more than enough money to do that, as we understand. So we thought this money could be used better in a different way. And then we're not actually removing the Midtown pedestrian intersection study. It will be included in Project 131, which is the Midtown area.
It's the bundle of short-term implementation projects, so it's our big list of studies.
Yeah.
And in there's a Midtown sub-area transportation plan that'll look at this. And so
Right.
that's why we took it.
Thank you. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to turn this over to Aaron because he's the guru with the spreadsheet. But the bottom line is that with these changes that we're recommending, we do come in under the total projected revenues, which we're more comfortable with. So I'm going to turn it over to him to explain the details.
There's not a whole lot to explain, but I just kind of want to point out a few things. This is part of our Excel that we use to determine our fiscal constraint, and I just wanted to kind of show you where we're at. So we cut off a few years just because it goes on until 2018, so in effort to save space. So for the non-motorized in the short term, we're at 0.4, which is 400,000 under, so that means we have a $400,000 excess of funding. And then if you go out to the long term, you can see here, we have 11.4, so there's $11.4 million in excess funding for the long term. We did cover that under the AMATS work sessions. The issue we ran into is we didn't have any additional projects to incorporate into the long term for non-motorized projects at this time. Roadway, as you can see, we're at 0.3 under, so 300,000 under in the short term. This short term here and long term over here. And then we're at $1 million under in long term. Transit, we are perfect in short term and long term. So overall, The short term is 700,000 under, and the long term is 12.4 million under. So one of the reasons we like to be under is because there's a recognized kind of shift as things go on. Projects can cost more or less, and then just trying to keep in mind FHWA's comments about it. It's better to have kind of excess funding than overpromised projects. So, any questions on this particular aspect? Okay.
I guess that's the end of our little mini presentation, so I'd like to turn it back over to the chair and see what the will of the body is.
Let the record show that Mr. Siddick joined us at 2:31. So, these ones are always kind of interesting when we go through the comment response and summary. The question is, for the committee, whether there are 24 pages of comments, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go through them and review them. Going through them on a one-on-one basis, if we had the intent of doing that, it's often better in a work session. So often what we do is we go page by page, and if there's a particular comment on a page that we would like to discuss further, we'll kind of go page by page. And if there's no objections to that or any other recommendations of a different way to go through these 24 pages of comments. Anybody have any objections to that? I'm correct, and this is how we generally do it. Okay, and are these are supplemental to those 24 pages?
These are the highlights, the highlighted yellow ones,
Okay.
comments, are the ones where we can make changes.
So this, Aaron, you'll get in with AMATS. So this whole sheet right here
Yes.
is a summary of all the changes we're recommending to projects in an effort to try and make it a little easier for people to see what's going on instead of having to find it.
Got
We
it.
put it all on one page.
Got it.
And anything that's highlighted or in purple in here is something above and beyond what we posted. So something we're bringing today to the floor for consideration.
Got it. So in those 24 pages of comments, this is kind of the boiling down of the primary changes that were made based on those 24 pages of comments.
Correct, because there's
Okay.
multiple comments on one project and each has the same response. So we've tried to make it a little easier to find.
Got it. Got it.
This is for projects only, so
Yes.
the other comments relate to
Yes.
other things.
There are other comments that relate to other things, yeah. I guess we go to the primary comments then, rather than the project changes. I'm asking, no,
I like
the
this.
the comments, the 24 pages of comments that we have. or
Can we just go through this, the consolidated?
Well, these are the consolidated recommended changes. That's not, I guess, if you haven't had the opportunity to go through the comments and the responses. I mean, and that's the thing, is we're supposed to be reviewing and forwarding the project list, the comment response summary, and the staff summary of changes, so kind of all of them. Correct? Aaron, what's your
It's really the comment response summary and the changes brought to the floor that we need recommendations on. Because it does have stuff in there like staff recommends no change, or staff recommends forwarding this to the public transportation department for review and stuff like that, so.
Yes. Okay, so we are going to start on page 1 of the 24-page document that is named is comment response summary project list. You already have the right one open? Yeah, I know. You have to be on your tablet, unless you picked up, did you pick up a printed copy of the whole thing? Okay, I didn't say if you wanna have one printed copy for that. So, page 1, if there's any, I guess, further discussion from the committee, if any items on this one.
way to make the tablets a little bit brighter, or are we stuck with what we have with brightness?
Yes, there is a way.
Yeah,
If
if
you
you swipe
pull
down from the upper right corner, okay, it should be a way to do, swipe and do the brightness.
On right proper.
Right here, yeah, the right-hand corner.
Right hand corner.
Down from the
My
right-hand
other
corner.
right.
Yeah.
Where's my grandkids?
Okay.
Are we open session?
Yes, for page one, if you have any discussion on it.
Page one, number one.
Okay.
Don't wanna, I would not recommend, moving 36th Avenue in the long term. 36th Avenue interchanges are probably first or second project of the Midtown congestion project. And to keep in concert with the, project development process that the consultant's currently on board with, I think, it needs to stay in short term, which is where it originally was.
Okay. I guess discussion for staff, because I think staff, you recommend moving project to 36th Avenue, although this is, yeah, I know, staff recommends moving this to be a part of project 212 in the long term.
And there's the other comment, 3 on a paper copy that says 36th Avenue access management for long-term to short-term, so maybe staff can just explain what the difference is.
One's an access management study, and the other's the interchange. So the comment on, so the one on the summary of changes, number 3, is an access management study, and it's a different kind of section. The one that's referred to for number 1 is the interchange at Seward Highway and 36th Avenue as part of the Midtown Congestion Relief Project.
So I guess in your staff response, you said that you did meet with DOT and you have to discuss the Midtown congestion relief, and that project will be done with project 212. So when you moved it to long-term, it was based on that discussion, but you're saying that that's not correct?
I think there was some confusion. What is project two, we have project 212 in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, Midtown congestion relief, Chester Creek. Reconstruct.
Comment.
It's the project list. It's 5AA, yeah. Swipe over to the project list.
So really quickly, the project list that you have on your tablets and we've provided for everyone doesn't include any changes in it that we have in our recommended staff edits. So what you see here is what was posted for the public for review.
Yes. But when you're saying that it's gonna be done as project 212, we can at least look at project 212 and see what the description is.
And in it, it does talk that there's a 36th Avenue interchange project in part of 212.
So maybe, is this project put into the short term under a different project then? Is that what you're saying?
So it was originally project 115 in the project list, and it's the Midtown Congestion Relief Project 36th Avenue interchange.
So no, he's saying it's being moved and combined to the
Yeah.
long term. So if that's DOT saying that that's not correct, I mean, that changes all of the funding assumptions, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, through the chair, that depends.
Okay.
We could add 36 interchange to the short-term project and keep the cost estimate the same in the short term. We talked about doing it.
So when you moved it to the long term, you combined the project costs? Okay, so you'd be peeling out that little bit, the portion for the 36. If that were to be the case.
I don't know how honest I should be, but yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I
Well,
think
it's
we have to
discussion.
be very clear do that, we'll have to, if we take the money. If we add the money for the 36 interchange to the short term, that will affect other projects.
Yes.
I mean, more than likely, we'll have to revert back to what it was when we posted it for public comment.
Yes,
So there would be no funding changes.
for other projects that were moved into the short term.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have to look at that. I have a star that this one's gonna have to, we're gonna have to come back to it, because we're gonna have to look at all the other recommended changes.
I don't know what the rules are, if I could just speak up or not, but,
Not yet.
Okay.
It's amongst the committee.
Okay.
Okay, any others on page 1?
I guess number 6 caught my eye. Move project 503 Elmore Road reconstruction from non-motorized to motorized. So 503, I gotta look at the dollar amount. I'm guessing there's no chance that could have been implemented with the funds, 13 million. And we were 11 million under, so.
Well, that project, I mean, when you look at the comments, when we originally were looking at this project list, I believe it was originally on the motorized list, and we we moved it to non-motorized.
Right.
Specifically because there was more funding there available, when we were looking at, and the primary beneficiary of this change, reconstruction, was for the non-motorized users.
You said it was originally motorized, under motorized?
Yes,
Okay, and we moved it.
And we moved it
To non.
Do a
Yes.
repackage.
Yeah.
and now the comment is to move it back.
Yeah. All right, comment withdrawn. I see there's, no way to.
So this one, number 6, number 7, and number 8
Yeah.
are all kind of linked together. They were originally roadway projects,
Yes.
on the roadway table. But when we had our work sessions, the committees discussed the primary beneficiary of these projects are the non-motorized users.
Right.
So they should be reflected in the non-motorized table. So as part of the approval to release it for the public, we moved it over to the non-motorized table. And the AMATS Citizens Advisory Committee got together and voted that these should be moved back to the roadway table. And staff's recommendation is not to do that.
Can we also start a comment too, because it seems like we're gonna have to talk about moving the right-of-way acquisition for 36, or for the Midtown congestion, to keeping that in short term, when we have a conversation about, 36. I feel like those two might become part of an overlapping conversation. About what's, I guess, in my mind, realistic.
Okay. I think that will be a big discussion point.
Yeah.
I think the hurdle is going to be we don't see the actual final list of what's,
Yeah.
that's the tough thing, is actually looking at what the final list looks like. Are there any others on page 1? Hearing none, I'm gonna move us forward to page 2. It looks like comment number 13 was actually deferred to us in the first place. Yeah,
Comment number 9 isn't even allowed. You can't toll for 9. It's a non-starter.
We shouldn't study it.
well, right now the staff recommendation is adding a study to the short term, so
It's not allowable.
it's not legal, I mean, how is it not allowable?
It's not legal.
Well, the tolling study is allowable.
It's not
Tolling
legal.
is not something.
The study is what
The
this
toll,
is.
the tolling is not legal on the Glen Highway. So it seems like a real non-starter.
Yeah, so why
For
would you
what?
spend the money
Yeah.
to
For a
study
study.
it?
When it's
Give
not
it to the
legal.
port, port needs money.
So if you check staff response, we actually talked about how the study would also look at changes needing to be made to have a dedicated funding source to use the toll for maintenance along the Glen Highway, in addition to congestion relief. So part of the study would also include looking at what changes would need to be made to allow tolling on the Glen Highway and having a dedicated funding source. So I think there might be merits in looking at a tolling, because as far as I know, no one's actually looked at tolling on the Glen Highway in recent years, and we keep hearing about it. And as staff, we have no ability to, one way or the other. We don't have anything with concrete data to say yes or no.
Well, I guess what John is saying is, it doesn't matter when you study, you can't do it.
But
It's
what,
illegal.
what makes tolling illegal? What
Is it
use?
I'll ask the statute.
Okay.
Well, that's part of what the study's gonna look at, is what needs to change to allow it on the highway.
Just because it's not allowable today does not mean that it.
I mean, this is a 20-year plan, so we are looking at what's gonna happen in the next 20 years.
Yes.
Would it be more palatable if it was instead of short-term and a long-term?
It seems like, to me, the better way to approach it is if somebody really wants to pursue that avenue is to find a legislative champion to look into statute instead of spending $500K to study it.
Well, and that's just a portion of it, correct? And so I guess, is there a point to looking into statute if we don't know if this will make sense or not? It's kind of a chicken egg, yeah. I would assume that no legislator would be interested in talking about statute without information on cost and benefits.
Well, it's the only way out of town. You can't charge people for the
Right.
only way to get someplace. There's no connect arm crossing. I mean, I can get why it's in statute that no, you can't put a toll on the primary system. Especially in this case, it's the only system.
I know one of the discussions at the CAC was having one lane be a toll lane, so you wouldn't be tolling the entire Glen Highway. You'd just say, this is a high occupancy lane, or this is a tolling lane, so you'd still have the ability to use the Glen Highway without that. I'm just giving you information.
Okay.
Because that exact discussion came
Right.
up. It's the only way out, how can you toll it? Like,
Right.
how about we do this?
It seems like we have other places to put our energy right now.
Well,
It came up at the CAC, so brought it to you.
And staff's recommendation in the updated changes is to move it to the long term instead of in the short term.
Got it.
Sorry, I missed that when I first looked at it.
Sorry, it's confusing.
They-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in this sheet, you'll see it says, originally it was short term, but our recommendation is move it into the long term.
Yeah, 13.
It feels like no, not until after we do the TDM.
Right.
That's kind of how we got to the TDM in the first place.
Agreed.
Although the TDM is not going to look at the road.
Get it, yeah. And I'm still trying to understand that the whole thing, since the last time we talked about it.
Well, the last time that this comment came in front of the Technical Advisory Committee, our recommendation was actually to leave the project in place because technically, based upon the traffic analysis, the road connection and extension is, I don't wanna say needed, but, really, it is shown as a positive connection in completing the grid and providing another access into the UMed area and dealing with some of the congestion issues we have in that. And so really, we did leave it to the policy committee because it was more of a political decision. I think that the comment, and then it went to the TDM, and then we've dealt with the money. I hate to say this, we've already said that it actually has technical value, but this is more of a political question in nature. My recommendation would be to leave it to the policy committee to let them make the decision on whether or not they want to add Any other comments on page 2? Yes.
Sorry, just a heads up, another one you might wanna star for later discussion is number 11, is the Seward Highway, Glen Highway Connection Airport Heights interchange. That is also related to the Midtown congestion relief changes as well.
Thank you. I would recommend moving that to the long term, therefore that's for long term. Staff, I would agree with the staff recommendations except for, leaving it in the long term. I don't think we're ever gonna get to it in the short term. Especially if we're focused on the Midtown 36 piece. That's the primary focus at this point.
Okay, page 3. Number 17, would you also say, Vision Zero team?
I agree with that.
One of the things that I want Vision Zero to look at, one of the things that Vision Zero has been discussing is related to enforcement, and that's another one of those issues that it's kind of statutory, because it will require a change in charter if we ever want to be able to do camera enforcement of speeds. Any other questions or comments on page 3? I kind of want to add additional to comment number 19 about the transportation funding being used on traffic calming, public transportation, walkability, bikeability. I mean, I think a lot of it is going towards trying to the walkability, bikeability. The issue with the traffic calming and using a lot of federal funds on local roads is we actually are more maneuverable and able to move things forward with local funding a lot easier than federal funding because of the environmental analysis that goes along with some of these federal funds. These projects end up being rather expensive, and if we could identify complete reconstructions, we'd be calling them reconstruction projects and not traffic calming projects. So it's kind of a difficult. I think we're trying to tap the federal funds where we can for projects that are large enough, but for the spot projects, it just doesn't make sense. Any others on page 3? All right, if not, page 4.
did this for survey number 2, where they said people could comment on things on a map. We did that with survey number 2, and we had a map online with MetroQuest surveys, and we produced a summary of all the comments that were there, and then a summary of the summary of comments. So I think what they're asking for here, maybe it would be easier to see these projects if they were mapped, and I do agree with that. But we had to be careful with our resources for that, with this project. So with the draft MTP, there will be, we're anticipating the projects will be mapped. That's our intention.
I think the basic gist of staff response is that we're continually working to improve our public involvement process, and this is a good comment to keep in mind.
That
More visualization, more interactive maps sort of thing, so.
Any others on page 5? Page 6 is actually a continuation of the same. Any questions on that? Looks like very much supporting the Minnesota multi-way boulevard study and moving towards that. And all the projects kind of clustered. Anything on page 6? Page 7. What is project 320?
It's the Spinard Road rehabilitation project from Minnesota to Northwood.
Got it. Questions on 7? Page 8. looks like they, comment number 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39 are all kind of one, but you break it down and show the individual projects.
Correct.
Okay.
I can make a comment as DOT technical staff.
Sure. Is it a correction or a comment or a I mean, because it's still kind of up here.
Okay, I'm in, we have AMATS.
Yeah, I know.
We AMATS staff is technical staff, I'm DOT
Yep.
technical staff. I figured they
Okay.
can read.
James, go for it.
James Darsley, transportation planner for DOT. On page 9 here, there's a number of comments regarding the project being funded by state FHWA dollars and is designed by DOTPF. I'd like to point out that when discussing the mid-down congestion projects and other projects that are funded by the state, by the STIP, that this is a they're under the same similar constraints as these projects. So as things are being moved around, you would need to be cognizant that the constraints of these projects being in the STIP rather than being AMATS funded projects is a legitimate concern when moving things from short-term, long-term, and illustrative.
Yep. Thank you, that is accessible for, and especially some of the projects that are in the TIP as well. You know, I mean, when you're looking at the TIP and STIP, anything we change, there's an impact there, so, yes. Thank you, James. Any other questions on page 9?
number 60 was, was that staff recommendation incorporated in this last budget update that Aaron just did?
Yes.
Like comment number 64 is also related to tolling on the Glen Highway. Any others on page 14? Or page 15? And 15. So I do have just a question that related, I guess, to the illustrative list. We did actually have a rather robust illustrative list, so removing some of them from the illustrative doesn't really hurt us technically, because we had more than we really probably should in the first place, correct?
Similar question, like on 67, with you're recommending removing, that means just eliminating the project altogether? If you remove it from the illustrative?
Yeah, so it'd be taking it and putting it into our appendix of things that we didn't move forward with as part of our MTP. We would not include it on any of our project lists, even in the illustrative category. So for example, what that means is if additional funding were to come along and we did an update to the MTP or to move projects from the illustrative into the long-term or short-term, those two projects would not be in consideration for moving into the MTP. This go.
This go, I'm
Yes.
saying, yeah.
They could be
But
looked
it
at
could
in the
change
future.
in the
Yeah.
next, the next 4-year update cycle that we'll be hitting, so.
In 2 years.
In 2 years, exactly. Exactly. Any other on 15? Page 16.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So comment 70 is actually incorporated into our,
So,
yes, 71, I'm sorry. And it's on page 2 of our
Okay, so your response is actually,
It's going to be included in project 131, which is the catch-all for studies. And that would be in the Midtown area, sub-area transportation study.
okay.
we work with you to get what information, what text to put in there? Okay, thank you.
I just wanna be careful about, yes.
But there is a policy or a program that allows students to.
Right,
see if people move
it's part of
bus.
the fixed route, yeah, we
Yes.
don't provide specific transportation directly to
Right.
schools, but yeah. Any others on page 17? 18. Any questions on page 18? Page 19. Questions on 19? Page 20.
Yeah, I was trying to figure whose aunt is Aunt Rosemary?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know who that is. She is everybody's neighbor.
Yeah.
It's another kudos too. I know, isn't it? Any on page 20?
Well, I see another comment about roadway speeds, AC, I, and L.
Yep.
Why are the flashing lights not adequate for, well, let's see. I mean, I know I and L Street definitely have good speed control corridors for the schools. Is there something lacking on A and C in your schools? I'm not.
This is a very complicated answer. So there actually are reduced speed school zones on, A goes into town, C goes down. So A, as it goes, what? By Denali. There is on A by Denali, and there also is on L. The issue of allowing crossing there is actually not a part of the safe walking route as defined by the Anchorage School District. So even though we have a reduced speed zone there, kids are not supposed to be crossing those corridors. ASD's guidelines on what is a safe street to cross, and that relates to volumes, lighting. I mean, there's a whole checklist and evaluation that goes through there. So even if you change the speed on the roadway, that does not automatically mean that the school district is then going to say that it's a safe walking route and not, I mean, because it relates to where they provide busing and, any arterial, pretty much they say is not a safe crossing location without either a crossing guard or a signalized intersection. So it's a combination of policies, it's not just one thing, and yeah, that's kind of a difficult thing to address.
If children are frequently crossing at certain locations, is there a simple way we could evaluate a safety improvement that does not require ASD's adoption as a safe route?
No, they have to be involved, they're part of the evaluation, and there's been many evaluations in the schools, and in fact, kids are not crossing in these locations. So.
Thank you.
Any others on page 20? On page 21.
commenting to yourselves? I mean, I don't get it. Does that mean states commenting to city people, or?
Or is this documenting changes that were recommended by staff?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And yours on page 24.
Phew.
Okay.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah, well, we still have, really, so this is just to clarify, Aaron, that this is also,
Change to what's.
this may reflect some changes based on what we just went over. It's the comment and it's the updated, and does this address all of the changes that have been recommended by the staff at this time?
Yes, it's one instance of it. So if you have a comment on, Project 200, for example, and there were 3 comments on it, we only showed 1 in here, in this document for it, because we would have duplicated and it would have just been kind of a mess. So it was just to say, okay, what action are you guys recommending? What do we want to do with it? It's hopefully an easier guide for the committee members and the public to kind of see what changes are being recommended. And it does include anything that's on the floor that we brought today, so that'll be part of the discussion as well.
Okay. So I think most of these, the big ones, as we were going through the issue as it relates to project number 115, the design suggestion, and then, Airport Heights, were all ones that we said we needed to come back to. So right now, in the short term, the Midtown Congestion Project, we're recommending a change to the name, correct?
Correct.
So updating project 116, currently named Midtown Congestion Relief Project, description to say, extends to retired frontage roads, purchase right of way for future improvements to ensure 20th. So my question for you, Todd, your comment was to leave, the 36th Avenue interchange in short term, but the PEL and kind of the projects, the interim project that's currently proposed, do we think that the interim project and the interchange are both gonna be able to be moved forward in short term? I think that was the discussion, correct?
Correct.
Well, I didn't hear you have moving 212 from long-term to short-term, correct?
No, 212 is staying where it is in the long term.
I thought Todd recommended, leaving project 217 in long term.
Correct.
As opposed to moving it into the short term.
Leaving 115 into the short term.
Yeah, but we're looking, I guess, at 2 different segments. We're looking at kind of the Midtown portion and then the portion of the Glen coming into Anchorage.
Correct.
And the Midtown PEL, as it's moving forward and looking at the phasing and the proposals of what's moving forward, I guess the question is how much of that can we move forward within the short term? And then how much of the other, because there's PELs moving forward, they're going to be moving forward on all the segments, so I guess, yeah, looking at that funding. DOT's recommendation is to leave 36th in and move Airport Heights back out to Airport Heights long-term? Yeah. Are they similar project costs or no?
No, the 36th Avenue interchange for the Midtown congestion relief was 70 million, and the Airport Heights interchange was 50 million.
I guess I'm confused on staff response when you say you met with DOT. Project 115 will be done in the long term under Project 212. Project 212 is the parent, right?
It's the second portion of the Midtown congestion relief. It's the long-term portion of Midtown congestion relief.
One is to two.
Well, not
So
the
you,
only, but.
yep, right, so you're saying, in your comment here, you're saying not to break out, I'm paraphrasing, asking for your clarification, you're saying not to break out 36th Avenue, but to leave it into the Midtown as a whole?
I think there was some confusion on the public's part as what's going on, and rightly so if you kind of look at it. And so we were just trying to clean up what Midtown congestion relief looked like in the MTP. So right now, there's a 36 interchange, is a separate project, 115. Then there's 116, which is additional work for Midtown congestion for the Northern Lights section. And then there's a third project in long-term that's for the Chester Creek portion. Because that's originally how it was in the 2035 MTP, roughly, the interim, sorry. And then when we met with DOT, we talked, is this right? And we thought as staff, we heard that it was the long-term or the short-term project was gonna be doing right-of-way purchasing and extension of the frontage roads. So that interim project that they show in the PEL, or that they talked about as part of the PEL. And then the long-term project would come along and start doing the interchanges as they had money available.
If that being the case, what is the project, the correct project to identify that right-of-way frontage roads?
That's 116.
Okay.
That's the change that they recommended to project number 116.
But we also
Correct.
recommended moving 115, the 36 interchange, and 50 million of that money to long-term. I know it's a really weird kind of game how it works, but we thought that 36 was gonna be done in long-term because the right-of-way purchasing and the frontage roads extension was gonna be done first. We didn't realize the intent was to do that plus the 36 interchange at the same time.
I don't think the intent is, correct me if I'm wrong, John, I don't think the intent is to do both of those at the same time, not the right-of-way frontage roads and 36.
Yeah.
They were, the intent was always to leave the 36 interchange as a standalone project. Whether it can be done, correct?
Mhm.
Whether it can be done in the short term is debatable, based on funding. I would agree with that. So, at some point, since we're discussing this, I would like to get the project manager of this project to comment since he is here, but,
Can we have the project managers here to help inform discussion? Okay. If you'd like to help inform discussion now, now. I know, exactly. State your name for the record.
This looks like a pretty fun job until you make it fiscally constrained. That sucks all the fun right out of it. So the
Name.
PEL is,
Name.
oh, Sean Hall.
Sean Holling with DOT.
So we're scheduled, to have our final draft here by the end of the month for the PEL. And so we've been working on our PEL in parallel with you guys working on the MPP. What the PEL is identifying in that forward is 5, possibly 6 projects that includes Tudor overpass, which is a separate project in the MPP. I guess my suggestion would be to break it out into those projects and mirror what the PEL says. We have estimates for each of those, and you guys were working on probably information that we gave you probably over a year ago, but we have a better idea what we're doing now. Is that possible to break it up into multiple projects like that? It seems like it would be more accurate. And, you know, I'd like to see it, we have good momentum, I'd like to see it all come back into the short term, but
Yeah.
that's probably not gonna happen.
Break out your checkbook, Sean.
Nice
Yeah.
try, Parker.
But yeah, I mean, I think that would be the cleanest thing to do.
So based on that, Kevin, how many projects, since I haven't been writing these down, keep track, how many projects do you guys currently have in the MTP for Midtown Congestion?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
For Midtown Congestion?
3 projects.
Okay.
Our recommendation is to merge it into 2, one in the short term, one in the long term.
Which is which?
So the short term would be purchase of right-of-way and extension of frontage roads, and long term would be the interchange improvements. Because that's what we got from our meeting with DOT.
If I can, again, Sean Holland, all those projects that are identified, they're independent utility, will have their own neat process, so they're truly separate projects. They may have phases within them, but they'll be separate projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome to know. We did not know that until just a second ago.
Right, so that's it, so in talking through.
Timing, questions, I don't know that yeah. I mean,
We
this
can give you
list.
that information tomorrow, when I say we're
That-
gonna meet, right?
That would be the only thing we'd run into trouble with is, our cost estimates are pretty constrained unless we're gonna start moving other projects out to pay for it. And so we're kind of limited to what we show currently for the Midtown Congestion. Breaking it out into 5 separate projects is no problem. The committees just have to help decide what's short-term, what's long-term. And then if we don't have enough money based on here's current cost estimates, either move other projects out or put the rest in a lesser.
The big one would be the furthest one out, so the big one's gonna go underground, you know, from, Benson up to 20th, so that would go last anyway, so I think that, I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head if those numbers work out, but I would think that we could probably squeeze the rest into the short term. Because the last one is the big one by quite a bit.
Michelle?
Just-
Hold on, Ms.
Oh,
McNulty.
I have a question for Sean, I guess. So the PLs in draft form, they'll go through public review or some other type of review and approval. And we're trying to match it with the MTP, and maybe this is a question for both of you. So I'm assuming that what's being shown now as a draft form could change as it goes through this approval process. And then does that affect, is it easy to change that in the MTP if that happens?
No.
Okay.
So, so I don't mean to speak on behalf of staff, but I think the intent with having one in short term and one in long term is that the PEL is just not far enough along in the process to have fully fleshed out what all those projects are gonna look like. And this is going to be updated in 2 to 3 years. I mean, and as long as you have a funding pot that's Midtown Congestion and has a description of projects, I mean, the funding is there, a project has been identified. It doesn't fully flush out all of the scope because it says planning level. That having one in short term, one in long term, that money is there, and that as that gets finalized and move forward, there is an opportunity, I mean, really in the next MTP update to be able to break it down as we have individually identified projects.
Yeah, I would, again, referring to staff, withdraw part of my comment about moving this all into the short term, because, I think, after clarification, the first phase of this is definitely gonna be buying the right of way and the frontage roads and building that construction. Those independent projects, those overpasses, we don't have funding for, even in our long range STIP. So as long as, and we're talking what, maximum 8 years, so as long as we're continuing the, PEL and then continuing the development, having money in the short term to continue the development of that PEL, continue the potential purchase of right of way, and interim improvements along that corridor is making improvements to that, is working towards that working towards that, Midtown Congestion project. I think it will take till the long term to get the rest of the funding for those interchanges.
Might have everyone will left Spain.
So you're saying you withdraw your comment about 115 remaining in short term then, and you're okay with the recommendation of the modifications to project 116 and the description changes and kind of the merging of additional funding in long term for the interchanges? Okay, so.
You agree with that, John?
Yes, the concept, yes, I was just looking at how it was written up by staff.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Is what
And that's
I-
what was confusing me is the write-up, but I think we can flush out some of this write-up to
So
make it
we're-
a little bit clearer.
Related to that, I think one of the changes that was made was when you shifted that funding into the long term, related to those interchanges, that freed up money, and that is why you moved the Airport Heights interchange forward.
So, in regard to the Seward to Glen, there was some concern by staff, the fact that a PEL is underway for the Seward to Glen highway improvements. And, by the time that could get done in normal PEL process, 2-3 years, there would still be about 7 years left in the short term. And if we didn't have any kind of project to move forward, it would just kind of languish there for 7 years. And then by the time we got moving on any projects, there'd be some question about, is it still valid, or would we have to redo the PEL for that one? So we were just looking for something with that freed up money to move in to say, okay, we recognize that we need to kind of baby step with the PEL for the Seward to Glen Highway as well.
Yeah, and in discussions that I would refer to some type of generic language that authorized spending on PEL recommendations and not identifying specific projects. Because, in part of getting that PEL approved was convincing our powers to be that, we're not recommending a whole bunch of $500 million worth of projects. There could be smaller bite-sized chunks that come out of recommendations that we could start much sooner. And so we're not identifying a specific project, I think,
Well, there's. I guess my question to you, Aaron, I mean, right now, as the Seward Highway, Glen Highway connection project was laid out, there's project 216 and 217, which is, 20th Avenue to 13th Avenue that talks about that portion, and then there was very specifically the Seward Highway, Glen Highway connection, the Airport Heights interchange. And the other one is the one that's the very large dollar, that's a little bit more general on what's actually gonna happen in there, and then there was the specific interchange project. Are you just saying that you prefer to just have Seward Highway, Glen Highway connection? I don't know, project
You could do something about Seward to Glen Highway PEL implementation project, and you could write something in the description that talks about taking interim recommendations
yeah.
from that PEL and using that funding for it. And same with the Midtown congestion one, you could put something in there about interim improvements while you're doing the right-of-way purchasing, because then that can cover, we got more funding early, so we can do the 36 right away, that kind of stuff. Our goal was to try and leave it flexible enough, because there's still some unknowns,
Yes.
to allow everyone to move forward and still have a better idea of what's going on and what was in the 2035.
So do you support the idea of moving a portion, rather, maybe not number 217, but I don't know if you don't wanna have Airport Heights interchange as a project specifically mentioned, but moving that $50 million, they recommended moving it short term. It was called Seward Highway, Glen Highway connection, interim improvements, or, something more vague.
Yes.
Okay. What?
Aaron.
Oh, sorry, Aaron.
Sorry, for
Yes.
clarification on that, would you want to see the Airport Heights portion of it moved into the illustrative Seward to Glen Highway, or into the long term?
I think it's okay. It was in the long term. I think that's fine. Leave it there.
So we put it in there, okay, thank you.
So we've gone through, we went through all the comments. These are the updated ones, and I think as we went through, you guys did a pretty good job of telling us where any changes were to be updated. There is one new one on page 3 of your handout. There's new, all highlighted, says new project 110 on highway frontage road study. Oh, this was in the packet too, the recommendations, okay. We said Northern Access for Zoning Policy Committee, we discussed, have we clarified everything that to you as it relates, have we changed anything really?
So I guess maybe we could just quickly clarify what is happening for the Midtown and Seward to Glen and just make sure we are clear on what everyone would like. Okay, so for project 116, that's the Midtown congestion relief, staff recommendation under the small list right here, it's number 105. Staff recommends updating the project name to Midtown Congestion Relief Project and the description to the following. Extend the Seward Highway frontage roads and purchase right-of-way for future improvements from Tudor Road to 20th. Project would include non-motorized improvements and consider adjacent land use. We recommend adding to that this also include interim projects as identified in the PEL to help keep that flexibility of if something comes along that's kind of a smaller dollar figure or funding becomes available, it can get done. But leaving that still in the short term with the dollar figure shown currently.
Okay. Which is, I just want to go back so
I believe it's 198 million.
193.
Thank you.
Yeah. You were close.
So close that I memorized.
And that, yeah. And that moved the individual project 115 of the interchange. We're still combining that with the long term.
Is my
Yes.
understanding.
Okay, I was just making sure, clarify.
So our comment above that where it talks about staff recommends moving project 115 congestion relief, 36th Avenue interchange to be part of project 212,
Yes.
that would still stay, is my understanding. And then we would update the name to get rid of the Chester Creek portion of 212 because we don't want to identify that it's that one area only that we're going to be working on.
Okay.
So that's for the Midtown congestion. And then for the Seward to Glen Highway, project 217, staff, let me see, it's on here, sorry, just a second. It's comment 65 on the front of the page. Staff recommends project number 217, Seward Highway, Glen Highway connection, Airport Heights interchange move into the short term. If I understand it right, it's okay to move the money, to have the money in there, but get rid of the Airport Heights interchange portion and make it a more generic PEL implementation project.
What's the value of that?
$50 million. So we recognize that it can be smaller dollar projects, AMATS can help with that, DOT can help with that, you know, there's no, this is how it shall be, it's kind of keeping it flexible. We may have to ask DOT to help us with that definition, just to make sure we don't miss it, but it's gonna be implement interim projects as identified in the Seward to Glen Highway PEL. Project would consider non-motorized improvements and the adjacent land use. Keep it similar to what we have for other things. No changes to money.
Okay. So are you clear?
I am, yes.
Yes.
And then just to clarify, those two, because that was the outcome, we are still able, it doesn't affect the available money we have in short term, correct? So we were still able to bring everything on.
Correct, so with those as identified, all the other changes that staff identified would still be able to remain if the committee's decided, including the ones we brought to the floor today.
Yes. Okay. So now, that's, I guess we've gone through the major discussion. Now it's time for public. I feel like I'm back on track now at 4:08. Are there any public comments at this time? Yes, public comments on the discussion points. Please state your name for the record.
Renee Whitesell, Dell. For project 116, we did discuss revising the name of that project. And I'd like to recommend a slight wording change to something along the lines of acquire right-of-way as needed between Tudor Road and 20th Avenue to create frontage road network for local access and associated non-motorized improvements and consider adjacent land uses. Just simply so as it's clear that right-of-way acquisition is actually needed
only rebuttal to that is it technically is for future roadway improvements that are gonna come along, so it's not really just for the right-of-way improvements. Or it's not really just for the frontage road
It
improvements.
is, actually.
I mean, because it'll be expanding it pretty significantly to make room for any future transportation project that would come along, right?
Yeah, it's got space in the midsection, but the frontage road will be used on the line right away.
Would adding the frontage, road language though limit you in the event that there wasn't a frontage road element and you did need it for a project otherwise? Or do you need that language tweaked to make sure that it is in line with your funding for that project?
I'm just trying to avoid the use of the interim project,
Yeah.
to recognise that the frontage road network projects are actually separate projects with independent utility and not interim.
All right, thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments? Please state your name for the record.
Yes, Barbara Carl, K-A-R-L. One quick question, what does ILLU stand for?
Illustrative.
Illustrative?
Yes, it means it's outside the fiscal constraints of this plan.
Okay. And I want to clarify that on number 13 on the short list here, that the staff recommends that you defer to the policy committee to make a decision on this comment,
Yes.
which would mean that it's up to whatever they decide, not what you decide.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments?
I just, Sean Holland again, I have, just a question, or a comment in general on these PELs, you know, depending on what references you read, the shelf life is about 5 years, and depending on which reference you read, that's either till when you start, from the completion of the PEL to when you begin NEPA, or when you end NEPA. And it sounds like you've considered that to some extent, but there's a few PELs in there, and I don't know, I guess my feeling is that if you don't have funding committed for building the projects in those PELs, there's potential that you're doing work there that's gonna have to be redone. So that's my comment, and it sounds like you're, that's not.
And Sean, just for the record, you do spell your name S-E-A-N, correct?
I do, yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Any other public comments at this time? Hearing none, the matter now lies with the committee for the motion, and at this time, staff was asking us to forward the AMATS policy committee for approval, the project list, the staff comment response summary, and the staff recommended changes summary as amended. I would say today would be as amended, but, yeah. Do I have a motion?
I move to forward the 2040 MTP projects list as amended to the policy committee.
Second. So moved by Mr. Van Hoen, seconded by Ms. Acton. Are there any objections? All right, hearing none, we are so moved. Thank you, everybody, for that work. I know, we've got about 15 minutes left, so. Item 6A is the 2040 MTP update. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, but there was an item kind of left out there that I didn't get clarification on, and it was what the description for the 116 project was. Because we had a comment from the public about changing the description to be a little more clear on what the right-of-way was being purchased for. So I didn't know if you guys wanted to leave what we have in the document, or if you wanted to go with what was talked about.
Technically, we made the motion, but I guess, yeah, it wasn't clear what the motion was when it's specific to that project.
And we didn't accept the, we,
It was a
we
comment,
accept
but
the
we didn't
comment,
modify
yeah.
it, yeah. Yeah, I guess it was unclear, it's a question, we made a motion, we seconded it, we had no
Like to
objection.
reconsider the motion, we can do that and then reopen it.
Move to reconsider. We need a second?
I think so.
A second.
Okay, so move to reconsider by Ms. Walsh, seconded by Ms. McNulty. For clarification on what the language would be for project number 116.
first you have to vote to reconsider before you can discuss, before you
Oh,
can
are
reconsider.
there any, sorry, are there any objections to reconsidering? Sorry, I moved in a second. All right, hearing none. We are reconsidering, but specifically to the language for project number 116, correct?
Can I make a suggestion to what that wording might be? It's just reorganizing the wording that's there. Okay. And start with purchase right of way for future improvement from Tudor Road to 20th Avenue and extend the Seward Highway frontage roads. So you just switch which part is before and after the and. And I think that gets to the right-of-way comment, but also addresses your concern.
So through the chair, do you not want to add includes interim projects identified in the PEL? You would like to add that?
Yes.
Would you
But I
also
think it's
want-
modifying, rather, right now, the language that was shown on here, it says extend Seward Highway frontage roads and purchase right of way for future improvements from Tudor Road to 20th Avenue. What John was saying was instead say, purchase right of way for future improvements from Tudor Road to 20th Avenue, right?
Yep, so that leaves it open-ended.
You said and,
Extend the Seward Highway
And-
frontage roads, and then if we wanna add the additional language, I wouldn't be opposed to, the for,
yeah.
Now, where are you guys getting the description again?
number.
Page 2 of the,
Oh,
page
the
2
new
of the paper, comment number 105.
Okay.
Yeah. Aaron, does that make sense?
Okay, so purchase right away for future improvements from Tudor Road to 20th Avenue and extend the Seward Highway frontage roads. We'd also add,
Includes interim projects identified in the PEL.
And I think the project would include non-motorized improvements and consider adjacent land use is still appropriate as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
okay,
And considers adjacent land use.
Yes.
okay, includes interim projects identified in the Seward to Glen PEL. And, our usual include non-motorized improvements and consider adjacent land use.
Yeah. You good with that, Aaron?
That works for me if that works for everyone else. It's kind of more clear on what, direction you want us to do for you. Thank you.
So we reconsidered, I guess we clarified that. Do we need to vote again then?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion again?
Move to forward to 2048. Comment review summary as amended, and with, from the staff summary to the AMATS policy.
Yes. Once again, moved by Mr. Van Hoen, second by Ms. Griffin.
There you go.
Are there any objections? No, ma'am. All right, there we are. Thank you. All right, then, we are on to item number 6A. Are there more updates for the 2040 MTD?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we will take the recommendations to the policy committee in 2 weeks. And we will work our tails off to get a public review draft NCP prepared by probably November.
All right. Short and sweet. So, oh, yes, any other questions, comments from the committee? Any public comments?
Just one question about the agenda. I don't see anything about releasing the state's updated limited maintenance plan.
It is not on our agenda, it was laid on the floor, it is gonna have to be done by the policy committee, it's an informational item. So,
Got it.
you missed that when you came.
It's here as an
informational item.
It will be on the
On the
policy
policy.
committee next Thursday as a business item.
Yes. So, item 6B, the Public Transportation Department Short Range Plan Presentation. Yay.
So we've got about 15 minutes, if you're okay to stay late, if not, we're free to come back next week.
We'd have to move to extend.
Oh,
Or we,
Second. Is that the second?
I think That's
okay.
okay. Are there any, I know, are there any objections to extending the meeting? Do we have to say how long we want to extend?
It's a good idea if you want to just go to
Okay,
so 5
I'll
o'clock,
amend
but
my
if we
motion
adjourn
to
early, that's fine.
4:40.
You could, yeah, you can say 5 and just adjourn earlier if you'd like to.
Pardon?
If you'd like to extend
Yeah,
it
do
to
that.
5, you can't do that and then just adjourn earlier. That way you don't have to do
How I
extension.
have the record is wanting to extend to 5. All right, extend to 5 p.m.
Second. Still second. Any objections? If anybody has to leave, we have no other business items, so technically we no longer need quorum, so if you need to excuse yourself, you're welcome to do so. If that's, sorry, did I change?
I'll do it.
Move to extend.
Here we go. Just let me know when you want to change this.
Go through that too. I'll just stand back here since we don't have to. First thing I'll just note, I'm Bart from Public Transportation. Christine Schutte is our transit planner, and she's the project manager for our short range plan, which we'll talk about real quick. But these are our 3 new logos. We've been kind of unofficially using the People Mover logo for some time, but over the next year, we're going to be rolling out these other logos for all of our services: rideshare, People Mover, and Anchor Rides. As you guys know, in October of 2017, we changed the system. We have frequent routes that come every 15 minutes, standard routes, 30 to 60 neighborhood routes, and the smaller buses that are meant to be inside the neighborhoods and just bring people from the neighborhood to the frequent route. And 2 commuter routes, South Anchorage and Eagle River, during rush hour. We've made 2 adjustments to our system since we rolled it out. The first time we realigned the neighborhood routes, and we transferred our Anchorage service from Eagle River to the Chugiak Senior Center. So since they're already there, they're already performing the trips. And then just July of this year, last month, we changed the operations of the neighborhood routes. It used to be contracted out, so now it's being done by our drivers. The Route 40 was our only route that we had service to the airport until 2 a.m. We actually scaled that back. It's now ending at midnight with the rest of our system. We are realigning the 65 to go to the airport, so now you can get from the airport to the Diamond Mall without a transfer. And we extended the 55 to AMC and increased that frequency. It was operating every 60 minutes, now it's every 30 minutes. And we added trips to South Anchorage on the Route 91. Sunday service was expanded to 8 p.m., so now we just have 1 weekend schedule for Saturday and Sunday. It used to be that Saturday operated an additional hour. So we've made some adjustments since we implemented the new system. And just this year in 2019, our ridership has grown compared to last year every month. And you can see the last couple of months were almost double-digit increases from last year. This was our trend before we implemented the new system. So the last 10 years, declining ridership. If we continued that trend, that's where we would have been. With the new system, here's where we are. So you can see in June, we averaged 12,000 rides per weekday. In 2017, that was 11,000. 16, 11.6. So 2015, so we're almost back to 2015 levels with our new system. So we're gaining ground on weekday ridership. Oops, going the wrong way. Saturday ridership, you can see the red is where we would have been, the blue, we're gaining a little bit of ground on Saturday. But Sunday is where we're really growing. We added a lot of service on Sunday. People asked for additional service on the weekends. We gave it to them, and now we're at the highest level we've been in the last 10 years for Sunday ridership.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is the significant dip every October? Like, does the ridership really dip that much in the
It's
wintertime?
December, January,
Okay.
every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying, because every single one of these, I'm like,
Yeah.
time frames.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
see it. It's December, January, every single year our ridership dips pretty significantly.
Huh, okay.
I guess people are reluctant to embrace the winter. And by February, they're like, okay, we'll start riding the bus.
Well, it's also school break. I think a lot of people try
Yeah.
to take vacations around the holidays and are out of town. I think there's
Could be,
impacts there
yeah.
too. I mean, midwinter.
It would
but-
be interesting to see
Yeah.
if, I don't know if road counts drop during,
They do.
at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there are reductions, so I was wondering. Thank you.
We have a partnership with ASD, as we mentioned, and that was expanded in 2018 and 2019, but our ASD ridership is growing, and during the last school year, we gave 141,000 rides to students. So just during the school year last year, 6% of our ridership was ASD students. So it's a pretty significant portion given where we were just a few years ago, trying to diversify our rider group. And we all know that young riders grew up to be adult riders and are good ambassadors for the system as well. So it's a big win with ASD this year, or last year. 42 schools can ride free. We also have rideshare. We changed our contractor, so instead of those big white 13-passenger vans, they get an SUV from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. We are at 76 van pools, 689 participants, and it just shows you that that's 52,000 annual trips, single occupancy vehicle trips that are taken off of the road every year. So, and that's a program that AMATS funds. Anchor Rides, 2018, 132,000 trips, and just for fun, who's riding Anchor Rides? Mostly to get to medical, work, social, and then a whole bunch of unspecified things. But those are just the 3 services that we're including.
I just drawn a comment. My cousin is losing her vision, and she really depends on Anchor Rides now, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great service. We have to, it's federally mandated to be within 3/4 of a mile of our system, but we actually expand that to all parts of Anchorage with a premium service as well. So it's available to a lot more people than what it's federally required to be.
Go back to right here and say the new program.
Oh yeah, sorry. Beginning 2 months ago, all van pool participants are receiving a free bus pass on People Mover. So one of the barriers is if you share a ride from the Mat-Su Valley, when you get here, you really can't go anywhere until your van pool leaves again. This way, if you want to go to lunch or if you have an errand to run, you'll have a free bus pass. You can use our People Mover system to go around. So we can thank our new director for that. So Transit on the Move is what we're really working on right now. This is our short-range transit plan. We haven't been to this committee, so we just wanted to recap that it's going to touch all 3 of our services, People Mover, Anchor Rides, and Rideshare. What we've done so far is we've looked at the planning parameters, set up goals, objectives. We did a system report card. So in December of 2018, we looked at how the first year of our bus system was performing, published that. We had a public event series in February that looked at goals and performance measures and targets based on accessibility, convenience, and reliability. We had another public event series in May and June. And we are right now looking at prioritizing the project list and everything that we've heard. So we're almost getting ready for the public review draft. We're right in the middle of that right now. So just to recap what we hear during the public series number 1 in February, we received 541 comments covering 651 topics, mostly at events that we went to. What we did is we had these 4 boards that people could put Post-it notes on, and we helped them organize them into these different categories. And so we got a lot of Post-it notes, a lot of things at all the different public meetings that we went to. Mainly, we heard keep the system as it is. They like the 15-minute routes. And then we also heard put back the old system. So we heard a little bit of both. But overwhelmingly, we heard they want access to Old Seward Highway. We used to have a route there. They want that route back. And they want direct service to the Leasac Library. So that's kind of like our marching orders. We know whatever we propose has to address those 2 things. So 185 wanted increased coverage. 17 wanted to talk about fares. And 36 were just about how we relay information. Additional comments, 80 comments for route realignments, expanding hours, increasing or decreasing the frequency. 43 were just talking about bus stop spacing, and then 26 for amenities. Under reliability, we had safety and maintenance, on-time performance, and 20 were just feedback on the bus drivers themselves, positive or negative. And then we had a bunch of other comments about the budget, and just general comments about the service there. We had 16 comments just for Anchor Rides and only 1 little comment for Rideshare. So what we do at the end of our public involvement activities is we put together these little fact sheets. They're available online. We bring them to our public meetings. It just says where we got the comments, how many comments we got, and a summary of what we've heard. And then there's a more in-depth that talks about every single comment that we got. If you really want the in-depth breakdown, of course, we post all of that online. During our public event series number 2, that just happened in May, June, we had 323 people vote on route ideas. Mainly the route ideas came from what we heard from those Post-it notes in February. Staff didn't propose any new ideas. We just simply took what we heard from the public, put it out there, and saw what people wanted. So we had 4 different maps, all with different route ideas. And they're all a little different because obviously if you implement one route a certain way, you wouldn't implement another route the same way. So they all kind of work together differently. One map just for Eagle River. And so some of them were just simple realignments to existing routes. Others were just brand new routes that were being proposed. We talked about this idea of microtransit. This would be a zone where a bus would come pick you up, sort of like an Uber or Lyft. You'd have an app, and then it would take you to the frequent route, but it would be operated by public transit, and it would be integrated with our fare network. So we started talking about that idea. This orange route got the most votes, so it's a route that goes from Diamond Center up Old Seward, touches the Lusac Library, goes over on Spenard to West Anchorage before heading to downtown. That got the most votes out of all of the other route alignments, and that was consistent with what we've heard in February. So that was not surprising to us. In Eagle River, the most votes they got were just a simple alignment to the Route 92. They basically said, don't change our route anymore. We like what we have. Let's just keep it. Don't cut us. Don't change it. So they just wanted a simple realignment to get off and exit earlier. We also had a bunch of other projects that people could vote on, other system improvements, so like adding back service on the holidays, increasing frequency, adding service on later on the weekends or weekdays. Transit security was a big one. We wanted transit security and the 2 for anchor rides. And then if anybody wanted to draw their own route, they could do that as well. This is our voting board. So we did have a lot of people suggest ideas, probably like what, 5 or 6, actually draw an idea that was not captured from what we already had. So these are the voting boards we had. Everybody got a little sticker. We had to use 2 voting boards just because of how many votes we were getting. Of all the votes, 50% of them were for a new route, and of those, 38% wanted to go to the Lusac Library. The other 50% of all things were just improvements to our existing system. Of that, they wanted just route realignments. Microtransit didn't get a ton of votes, and keep Route 92 the same, got some votes, so we threw that one in there too. Top project categories, the blue, we had 3 different routes for the Old Seward Highway. Of all those 3, got 23% of the vote. So it's clear that we were gonna implement a route on Old Seward, probably prioritize that first. Transit security came in second. Adding service on the weekend, third, and then tied for fourth is a 36th Avenue route and an Independence Park Elmore route, and then all others fell at 46%. So again, this is our summary of what we heard. If you really want to go and look at how the votes fell for each individual project, that sheet to the right shows you how many votes every single route idea got, and that's online too, and then where the votes came from.
How did you check that people only voted once?
We kept track. They had to sign in, and if they voted by email, we just checked the email address to them. Not to say that somebody didn't sneak through, but yeah.
5 stars on their thing.
So where we are now, before we get ready to go out to our last public event series, we're finalizing the project list, and now that we have how the public voted, we match that up to our goals, objectives, performance measures, and targets, which we've already have established, to make sure that they align with those. We're going to estimating costs for all of those and putting together a public review draft to come back out late fall. Late fall.
Did we say winter? No, just
When is winter? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It looks like we got a font issue, but
We need.
but that's everyone knows what that says. So that's it. Trying to keep it short.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee?
well,
I just have one comment. The service changes that you were seeing in July, that was all done within our existing budget. And so that was, I'm really proud of these guys for the work that they've done. They worked really hard and they're making improvements all the time on the system, so, and it's showing.
Which routes got the Sunday improvements? Or I mean, the additional Sunday,
The entire system.
service?
All routes.
Yeah.
Well, except for the 2 commuter routes. The 2
Yeah.
commuter routes are just weekday only, but all the other routes got it, yeah.
And I did hear peripherally just comments on this transit on the move and the engagement, the public involvement that you had. I've heard a lot of positive feedback from people, just seeing that they've seen it a lot more places than they have in the past and had opportunity to engage. So I just wanted to share the kudos because I've actually had it shared with me.
That's
So,
great, thank you.
yeah.
And to kind of just add on to that, just everything that I received, like the dashboards that you're doing and the information pieces and how you're gonna pull it down, it's been graphically incredibly easy to follow. You're doing a really incredible job getting it out there, you know. That's why I'm looking at her. I know part, but yeah, you're doing great.
Are there any public comments on this item? All right, then we are on to our information item, which is the Eagle River PM10 limited maintenance plan. I just might made oh yes, Eagle River second 10-year PM10 limited maintenance plan.
So, under the section 175A of the Clean Air Act, states are required to submit or revision of the first 10 limited maintenance plan 8 years after the submission of the first 10-year limited maintenance plan. So under the, as permitted by the requirements in the limited maintenance plan guidance memo. So the first 10-year limited maintenance plan was submitted on September 29, 2010, but was approved by the EPA on March 8, 2013, which means the first 10-year limited maintenance plan ends in 2023, and second 10-year limited maintenance plan starts in 2023. So we came together with the representatives of AMATS, MOA, we discussed the development plan and the rules and responsibilities. So after meeting with the AMATS representative and MOA, we forwarded everything to EPA. So they came up with their suggestion on encourage its department in conjunction with the state. We wrote the second 10-year limited maintenance plan. There are requirements in the LMP guidance memo, which says as long as the state attains the PM10 standard, which is 150 microgram per cubic meter, they can write the second 10-year limited maintenance plan. That is the first requirement. The second requirement says the 24-hour PM10 average design value must be at or below 98 microgram per cubic meter. We meet that. The third requirement is the state must only expect limited growth in on-road emissions, including fugitive dust. We meet that. So we came together, we wrote it. The state wrote it. We gave it to Anchorage Air Department to review. The review. So they came up with their own suggestion. We incorporated everything and forwarded everything to EPA. EPA review gave their suggestion. We incorporated everything, and that is what we have here. So the only major difference between the first 10-year limited maintenance plan and the second 10-year limited maintenance plan is in the emissions inventory. We have 5 categories of emissions inventory in the first 10-year limited maintenance plan. For this second, we have 6 categories. And the reason is the state decided that we wanted to see what contributions the non-road emissions add an Eagle River. So we incorporated that, and another major difference is we actually included the critical design value in this second 10-year linear maintenance plan to justify the eligibility of Eagle River. So that's the major difference between the first 10-year limited maintenance plan and the second 10-year limited maintenance plan. So if anybody has any questions on that draft, I'll be glad to answer any question.
All right now.
And just so everybody's clear, yeah, this is an informational item, but it will be presented as a business item at the policy committee and be released for public review, correct?
Yeah, we're just asking for
Yes.
30-day public review.
Yeah.
We'll have another opportunity to go through it,
Yeah.
modify whatever. But at this point, it's just the public review.
All right, any comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Oh, sorry, I'm just kidding. I looked right over you.
Just a quick comment, I'd like to thank Ms. Walsh in the port. She offered an invitation to DOT to go tour the port, which we took her up
This
on.
is, I'm in on this item. I know, you're already moving, I'm in on this item.
I have no comments on this.
Sorry, I know.
I do.
Were there any? I know.
Yemi
Okay.
put a lot of hard work into this, and I really appreciate the state taking the lead on this. The reason why it seems like they're doing this way early is because EPA can take up to 18 months to review a plan to approve it. So they are being very proactive in making sure that we meet our deadline for the second 10-year update. Thank you so much.
No, and that's good, I know, I was hearing when you said that they submitted in 9 and 10, and it wasn't approved until the 2013.
Yeah.
I heard that timeline, so I was like, oh, we're on schedule this time.
Exactly.
That's great. All right, any public comments?
On this side.
No? All right, on this side. All right, now committee can, now it's your opportunity. You were up first.
Sorry,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Again, I would like to thank the port and Ms. Walsh for the opportunity to tour the port. She offered it up at one of our previous meetings, and our regional director took her up on the offer. And a good number of DOT employees went down and toured the port. It was a great tour, it was a great informational tour. So I recommend that if given the opportunity to certainly go down there and take advantage of it. Thank you.
Welcome. Now you know why we need to do what we have to do.
Very important.
Any other committee comments? Yeah, we had triennial review last week. We got to spend 2 days with our friends from FTA. So in 2016, just for reference, we had 15 deficiencies. 2019, we showed 7, so making improvements. So we'll be receiving a draft report, and then we'll have a time period that we need to turn things around and resubmit different items. And so we hope to close out all those items before the final report, and then we'll get to go for another few years. So yeah, there was over like 500 questions that had to be answered and documents provided all across the municipality. And so we had 7 deficiencies, that wasn't too bad. So
That's awesome. That is awesome. Good job. Yeah, good job. Any other committee comments?
Well, just the big deal that happened at the port is that on July 30th, the Assembly approved the first contract to build the first phase of the petroleum cement terminal, which is the first new dock or new wharf and trestle that we've had since 1990. So long overdue. There was some controversy, so let's not finish it just first phase. The best awesome thing is the bid was low enough to build the whole trestle and the whole wharf. So we'll have a trestle out to, a wharf with piling, pile caps, and decking. What that means is, and meanwhile, in 2021, we hope to build the rest of it, the mooring dolphins and the bells and whistles, so you can start offloading cement and fuel. But God forbid we have another problem and we have to shut some docks at the port with an earthquake or something, we'll have that flat thing to use for emergency offload of materials and so on. So there's a resiliency feature to it that's pretty cool, and you won't notice that you need it till you need it. But I'm telling you, you're going to need it. So it's awesome. We'll have some real life construction happening. The pipe in the beam was ordered yesterday, and we should see it going in. It should be complete. That phase should be complete by the end of next season.
Wow. Nice.
And if we can't get the rest of the money for a few more years, I figured we could rent it out as a wedding venue.
Nice. All right, are there any public comments for the good of the order?
Can I?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
he's
know,
not
didn't
here.
show.
He's not here.
I know.
Just want to note for the record, that last month was his last meeting. He
Yes.
was not on the committee when I got here, but he was clearly working for the municipality because he has since 1902 or something. Anyway,
He's not
I
here
just want to
defending
note for the record, thanks for his many years of service to AMATS and to the municipality.
I agree. As I wish he was here so we could applaud him. I was saying with him transitioning off the technical advisory committee, I now think that Mr. Lindemood and I are probably the longest standing members on the TAC. So,
Just for context, I first met Jerry when I was working at the old office, you know, the ACO trailer office in 1979. So, that was a while ago.
and that's when I get to throw out once again, that was before I was even born.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's a more fun fact, when he was, and I didn't know this till I met him then, when he was in college, he worked as a surveyor for my dad out on Amchick Island, doing surveying for the big blast they had out there. So I went, when I heard that, I went and asked my mom, she dug out his personnel record, and it was his picture, and he looks just like, the beaver from Leave It to Beaver.
Oh my
Why do we not see that?
I know. I need a picture for his retirement party.
They closed the office, they finally destroyed all of it.
Oh, man.
Anyway, yeah, so we go back a long way, it's even longer than we knew. So we'll miss him.
That's true.
Sharon clearly started the meeting when she was
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
That was
just
yeah.
small.
All right, with nothing else, we are going to adjourn this meeting at 4:46.